Yeah, I was thinking about how to start this presentation, given the fact that virtually no one here knows me, and I decided not to talk about the fact that I was the dean of the Stockholm School of Entrepreneurship, that I'm the head of the entrepreneurship department at KTH, that I've mentored hundreds of entrepreneurs, that my doctoral dissertation was the best one in the field in the United States, that I lecture in the US, Africa, Asia, that I have an international journal that I founded, or that I spend my free time helping entrepreneurs create businesses, or that I'm a member of the Danish Venture Capital and Private Equity Association and the Swedish Venture Capital and Private Equity Association. I decided not to talk about those things and just let the content ride. Also, when Annika asked me to talk, she said, I want you to talk about that. I saw you tweet about pivoting. I want you to talk about that. I said, great. I'm developing this course on business models and pivoting and whatnot, and I have a great 2-hour presentation that will really knock their socks off. And she said, well, you don't have 2 hours. I said, okay, I can cut some things out, tighten it up. I can give an hour presentation that is going to be really on the money. She said, you don't have an hour. I said, well, how much time do I have? She said, well, you have about 25 minutes or so. So I said, okay. So I'm going to have to go a little bit quickly, and you'll be determined. You'll determine if I've cut out too much. And also, I tend to get excited, believe it or not, sometimes about this material. And when I do that, I might speak a little bit quicker. So if you're having some trouble understanding me, just wave your hand, or we can pick it up in the questions. Okay? So, a brand new dance. How many people saw the promo video of this section on the website? Did you? Okay. Well, again, the pivot is a dance. It's a dance where one foot is planted and you do some dance moves around a single foot. Okay, where one foot stays planted. Or also, it is perhaps more widely known as a basketball move. Basket, anyone? Where, again, one foot is planted and you're pivoting around that one foot. Now, it's the most efficient way to turn direction. Okay. Put that right there. So, why am I talking about this? Okay, I'm talking about it because it's important for venture creation. It's important for value creation. And when someone asks me what my area of expertise is, I say it's value creation. Value creation through the formation, rapid growth, management, and rejuvenation of business enterprise, but it's ultimately about value creation. And this idea of the pivot, which is in fact about a special type of strategic change, okay, is important not only for new ventures, not only for new business development groups, but also for corporate venturing. Okay? And Beth was talking about startups, and startups is something that I'm passionate about, because I believe that entrepreneurship is the best way to create value. It's the best way to create wealth in society, best way to distribute wealth. It's the best way to build the tax base, best way to employ people. So entrepreneurship is really important. But the way that entrepreneurship has been practiced in the past is a little bit different than the way that I'm instructing people to do it now in the 21st century. And that the startup itself is a temporary phase where the organization is searching for the proper business model. And then once it's found the proper business model, it's about scaling. So it's kind of two parts. It's about a search for the proper business model and then scaling. Also, I want to say that this material comes out of four people's brains. It comes out of Eric Ries, it comes out of Alex Osterwalder, it comes out of Steve Blank, and comes out of my own head. And they say that amateurs borrow and professionals steal. I'm a professional. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about here. It's the process is broken into two sort of parts. Search for the business model, then some sort of transition as we move into the scaling phase. Okay, does that make sense? I need to, a quick aside here. I need to make sure that everyone kind of is on the same page with respect to business model when I talk about what a business model is. And this is where it fits, because this is the opportunity development process. And it's 4 or 5 steps here. It's the ideation phase, which is the process in which you come up, let's say, with the business idea. Okay? Then there's customer space and customer, this is my language, but so customer space is kind of, is there room in the customer's world for your product or service? Okay, is there room? That's customer space. Then the business model. Okay? And then market space. Market space is there room in the competitive environment for your product and service? Now, just because you have a good idea, okay, and just because you have a good business model, and just because the customers really like your product, that doesn't mean that there's room for your product or service in the competitive space. In fact, it probably means the opposite. If you have a good product and a good business model, the competitors probably aren't going to like you very much. Okay. So ideation, customer space, business model, market space, and then there's interaction with the environment, and it's an iterative process, as Beth mentioned before. So those steps are what is a business opportunity. I could give you kind of an academic definition of what a business model is, and talk about systems and processes that transfer value from here and shift the value over here and that kind of stuff. But for our purposes, all you need to know is that it's how does the business make money? How does the business make money? That's what we can think about when we think about the business model. Business model these days is really important. Okay? When we think about innovation, we generally think, especially at Côté-Hau, especially think about technological innovation. Okay? And then I work with Handels as well, and they're mostly talking not about technological innovation, but they're talking about product and service innovation. And then there are some enlightened people that are starting to talk about process and logistics and innovation and that sort of area as well. And only now, in the last couple of years, have people started talking about business model innovation. But business model innovation is where it's at, if we can use a slang vernacular. This is where the money is today. It's in business model innovation. This is just a graphic just to show the scale difference here that IBM did in terms of the importance of business model innovation vis-a-vis product and service innovation or technological innovation. Okay? It doesn't really matter. All you need to know is business model innovation is important. Okay? So, a quick and dirty way to think about what a business model is these 4 things. It's value proposition, it's revenue model, it's production model, and it's a delivery model. Okay, so value proposition is basically what is the customer getting for his or her money? What are they getting? Okay, revenue model is how do you make money? Do you sell it? Do you give it away for free and make money on the service? Okay, is it by subscription, rental, blah, 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 blah. Hundreds of different ways in which you can get revenue. Then there's production aspect of it. Production model. How do you produce it? Do you produce it in-house? Do you outsource it? If you outsource it, what portion do you outsource? Do you outsource the entire process? Do you outsource just the production and you do assembly? There are many different ways in which you can actually create your product and or service. Okay? And then there's the delivery portion. How do you get your product and service to the customer? One, how do you make them aware of your product and service? And then how do you deliver it to them? And that can be through distribution, etc. But there are hundreds of different ways. It could be face-to-face. It could be with salespeople that you own and control. It could be with independent salespeople. It could be through retail outlets. It could be through wholesale outlets. You could own the wholesale outlets, or you could use other wholesale outlets. There are many, many different ways. And just as an example of this, if there are 10 different revenue models that we have come up with, and 10 different production models that we've come up with, and 10 different delivery models, okay, anybody who's taken math, how many different potential business models do we have? 1,000. 1,000. Okay, now that doesn't mean that all 1,000 make sense. That doesn't mean you need to evaluate all 1,000, but the point is that there are many, many different ways in which you can mix and match. And in business model innovation, it's saying that your product and service can be very similar to the products and services that are being sold by your competitors, but it's the business model that is your point of differentiation. The business model is what separates you from the pack. Okay, is this making some sense? Okay, this is still an aside. Okay, here is just an example of a couple of companies that really had their breakthrough based upon business model. Okay? Not that their products and services were so good. We could argue that some of their products and services were inferior to the competitors out there, but it was how they earned money from it, it's how they produced it, it's how they delivered it, which really separated them from the pack and made them the household names that we know today. Okay? So the business model is important, and business model can be the place where you can differentiate yourself, even if your product and service is virtually the same as your competitors. Okay. This is Osterwalder's 9 steps. I gave you 4. If you really wanted to get into the business model, you could look at these 9 steps to analyze your business model, or to analyze your competitor's business model, or you can use these steps to help build your business model. Okay, but I just wanted to give you a quick view of that. That's in his book. Okay, so back to the dance. Okay, that was the quick aside. So as I said, pivoting is about change. Okay, it's about change. It's about strategic change. But it's not just any sort of change. You know, the environment is changing all the time. And businesses that are awake realize that they have to make changes. But oftentimes the changes that companies make, especially small, medium-sized enterprises, especially companies that are rapidly growing, tend to be a little bit random. Okay, we tried this, that didn't work, okay, so then we need to try this. And then you start to kind of get in a panic sort of mood where they're trying to change and trying to do all of these sorts of things. Unfortunately, that sort of change is detrimental. And companies are oftentimes not very successful surviving all of this sort of change. So this idea of pivoting has to be something a little bit different. Okay? And it is. And this is what Eric says here. He says, keeping one foot in the past, placing one foot in new possible future. Over time, this pivoting may lead them far afield from their original vision, but if you look carefully, you're able to detect a common thread that links each iteration. Again, it has its foot planted. That foot can be its values, it could be core technology, it could be a customer segment that they know really well and want to focus in. It could be anything, but that stays the same. That stays the same, and they change direction really quickly. Okay? And ultimately what pivoting is about is kind of a method around which you make those changes. How do you make those changes not in a random way, but in a way that is not only efficient, but effective as well? Okay? So how do you do that? Well, what it's about is changing your business model. It's about changing your business model. Okay? Simple as that. It's about changing your business model, but it's done in a very smart sort of way. And as it says here, it can be as simple as realizing there was a pricing problem. It could be as simple as, well, not necessarily as simple, wrong customer segment, wrong feature set. You think the customer likes these group of features, but they actually like these. And the question is, you should be thinking about, okay, well, how do we learn about this information? How do we know that the current business model that we're using is not the right one? How do we know that? Okay? And you know it by real-world testing. So what I'm arguing is that this business model is really important, and that you should use the business model as a hypothesis. You use the business model as a hypothesis that you want to test. Okay? Go back to chemistry, go back to your school days when you had a hypothesis, and then you went about testing it to see if it actually held up. So that's what this process is about. It's about picking a business model. It's about then testing it, okay, and seeing that it works, and then it's about expanding it. Well, how do we actually test it in the real world? Well, what do we interact with the customer. We interact with the customer, and the customer will tell us, okay, maybe quite literally, but they certainly will vote with their money, with their dollars, with their kroner, with their euro, to say, yes, you're going in the right direction, or no, you're nowhere close. Okay? So the pivot point here is here. We've picked a group of customers, okay, and then we try to validate our business model by going out and trying to test it. And we continue to do this until we get some success. And once we get some success, we then move on to the scaling process. Okay. You may have heard the term time to market. Okay, we got to get to market fast. There's a small window of opportunity and that sort of stuff. I mean, I wrote a paper that delivered in Hong Kong 10 years ago, and it was called The Death of First Mover Advantage. Okay? I don't want to give you this test, but just think about what products were first in their market segment that are still the market leaders today. And you'd be hard-pressed to find a product or service that was first in its market segment that continues to be. There was a paper a long time ago that talked about first mover advantage, and they were talking about first mover advantage in terms of businesses that had high capital investment costs. So a railroad. If you're the first to put a railroad, that's a significant advantage. If you're first to put a hotel on this block, that's a significant advantage. There are a few cases where there are very high switching costs that being first is important. In all other places, being first is really not where you want to be. Okay? What you want to be is first to adjust. You want to be in the market, you want to learn customer validation, you want to learn what works, then you want to have a system in your company that allows you to take this information from the customer and incorporate that into new iterations of the product and service. And the quicker and easier you're able to assimilate this information, the better off you're going to be. The more value you're going to create, and the more money that you're going to make. I think one of the things that Annika was talking about, me being an academic, I actually like to talk about money and making money. And most academics are kind of scared of that thing, money. Even at Handels, they talk about EBIT and a whole bunch of things, and not really cash money. Okay, so the role of feedback. I hinted at it a few seconds ago, but what's the true role of feedback in this whole pivoting idea? It's right here. The role of feedback, okay, is to find out whether or not your vision matches the reality, or are you just delusional? Okay? And lots of entrepreneurs are delusional. I mean, you need to have a little crazy, you have to have a little crazy gene to go out and try to do things. Okay? You do. But you don't want to be committable. You don't want to be that crazy. Use customer feedback, customer validation, okay, to see if what you believe is true matches what reality says. The way that I'm explaining this as well, I'm explaining this as if it's very easy. Okay? And it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. Okay? Meaning the processes are relatively simple, but really management, implementing it, and getting people to go along and everything makes it really difficult. Makes it really difficult. The hardest part is this judgment issue. This is the case pretty much in every field, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a doctor or you're a lawyer or whatever you do. It's the judgment that separates the superstars from other people. And how do you get this judgment is a question. There's some innate ability, there's some experience, there's some lots of different things to get this particular judgment. But we don't necessarily have to rely on judgment because we have a system, this experimental system, okay, the process. Let's talk about what this process is about. Okay, when you are creating your products, okay, you kind of should have two teams. You should have a problem team and a solution team. What does the problem team do? The problem team engages with the market, engages with the customer, and tries to come up with the problem. If you are not creating your product and service to solve a problem, you have a problem. If you're not using your product or service to solve a problem that the customer has, you have a problem. So you need to have a problem team. The top problem is scoping the problem. And on the other hand, you need to have a solution team. The solution team's job is to come up with the solution, the product or service, for that particular problem. You have a problem team and a solution team. Now, the solution team is out there engaging with the solution, trying to get the customer to buy it. They will hear after they've tried and the customer's not buying it, maybe we have it wrong. You beat your head against the wall a couple of times, the customer's not buying it, say, maybe we have it wrong. So then the solution team needs to go back to the problem team and say, hey, look, we have a problem. So the solution team is kind of the early warning that there might be a problem. Comes back to the problem team, they work together, the problem team redefines the problem, okay, which then leads to a new solution that they then test. So we had one business model, it didn't work, one set of products, it didn't work. We've now realized that, we've gone back, we've made an adjustment, now we're coming out again. And if it doesn't work again, then we make another adjustment. If we keep doing that, and if we do that in a smooth and relatively rapid fashion, we will ultimately find a set of value propositions, a set of revenue models, a set of production models, a set of delivery models that will work. That will work. So you need a problem team, you need a solution team working together, and they both need to have some contact with the market. Some contact with the market. I work with lots of engineers. They never talk to the customer. They talk to the salespeople. And the salespeople, as we know, might give them a skewed view, not reality. And engineers, your development people need to be in contact directly with the customers as well as the sales team. They both need that. Okay, types of pivots. I'm going to have to speed through this. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just a number of types of pivots that you can have. Customer need pivot, customer segment pivot, zoom in pivot, zoom out. A zoom in would be where you're trying to sell a product with lots of features, but the customers are only using one. They're not using any other one. You say, maybe we should focus on that one, get rid of the other ones. Okay? Let me skip that. Examples. Let's go to some examples. Okay, PayPal, 1999. I got a PayPal account in 2000. I missed this, but 1999, what was their primary product? Their primary product, they had an encryption system to allow them to transfer money across Palm Pilots. That was their initial product. They had on the side a secondary product to send money by email. What happened? Zoom in. No one wanted to transfer money using Palm Pilots. Everyone wanted to do it through email. They got rid of that and focused on the one that made money. Pivot. YouTube. Video dating. How many people know that? Video dating. They dropped that fast. Okay. And you don't know this one. This was founded in the United States, 1908, in Rhode Island, where I went to school, actually. Medicated powder. This company was regionally successful. He bought it for $1 million, wanted to take it national. Okay? So he started to sell this medicated powder, kind of talcum powder. All the feedback he got was that people were using it because they had itchy feet. They were using it as foot powder. He was trying to sell it as a general powder. They were using it as a foot powder. Now, he could have said, no, don't put it on your feet. Put it on your body. Okay, he didn't say that. He said, you say it's a foot powder? It's a foot powder. He started changing all his marketing, selling it as a foot powder. Twitter, podcasting platform. They had started it, and then guess what happened? iTunes came out. They said, uh-oh, we're screwed. So they say, okay, let's do this group SMSing thing. That didn't work. Last pivot we see here. Red Hat. Bob Young was in California. He was unemployed. He wanted to start a store selling Unix products, Unix books, all kinds of Unix stuff. So he was kind of smart, went out to the street with a notebook and said, hey, what kind of Unix products do you want to see? They said, well, we don't want any Unix products. There's a new free Unix thing called Linux that we want to know more about. So he said, So he switched to Linux, Red Hat, the first $1 billion Linux company. Groupon, last one. Groupon, The Point. It was a social movement. It was a social activities, social political, trying to change the world. One of the things they did was collective buying in sort of a discount sort of thing. People said, this is pretty cool. They dropped everything else and became the fastest growing company in history. Okay? Interaction with the market, changing the model, pivoting, turning quickly, testing with the market. Okay. The ideal pivot should be you change, but while you're still doing your old thing. Kind of parallel path, if you can. That's the ideal way to do it, if you can. It might not be doable all the time. Pivoting allows a company to fail, but not totally fail. This whole idea of this experiment where you're testing elements of your business model objectifies the business creation process. So it's not personal anymore. The business didn't fail, the idea didn't fail because you're stupid. It failed because this attempt was not successful in the marketplace. You remove blame from individual people and you put it on the relationship with the market. The market didn't buy it. That's fine. That's not failure. You just learned another piece of information that you can use in your new iteration. Okay? Again, if you're doing this really, really well, you keep your business model exactly the same and then just change one element. Exactly the same, change one element. Because what do you know from science? If you change multiple elements, then you don't know which one is the one that caused the effect. So you try to keep the business model exactly the same and change one element, if you can. Like I said, simple, but not easy. Okay, so finally, so what? What is all this stuff about? Business model is important. Business model is important. Today, this is where the money is, business model, okay? One. Second, customer validation. Interact with the customer. Get this feedback, incorporate it into your new iteration. Change it based upon the information that you get. Validate, validate, validate with the customer. Don't rely on someone's opinion. Ask the market. And when you ask the market, I mean give them an opportunity to buy. Okay. And finally, it's about the pivot. It's about the pivot. It's about changing. Keeping one thing down, and it's about the pivot. Okay? I hope you got one or two things out of this. You'll need one or two things, and I'll be happy. Okay? Thank you very much.
Fantastic as always.
Okay, good.
Do we have any questions for Terence?
I know you. I know of you, at least.
Hi, my name is Christopher from my news desk.
Yes. I'm a customer as well.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about all these new economy companies that have no business model at all from the beginning. What do you think about these companies? Are they smart, or are they just a bad thing? Just skip the business model. And the second question is, I was thinking about Google from the beginning. They had some really tough years from the beginning, right? But they will stick to their vision and stick to their idea just to create the best search engine in the world. But should they, make this dance in the earlier stage, or should they just stick to the vision?
Yeah, good question. The first one was about a company that's just out there.
Yeah, that's they have no business model.
Right.
Just a great product without business model.
Right.
And I think it's good.
This is the thing. I think that selling is hard work. Selling is really hard. Anybody who has a business, selling is hard. Okay, I don't want to sell. I want customers to buy. So if I create a product without knowing the customer at the end, I've just made it really hard. And the success then is random. Okay? It is much better to find out what the customer needs first and then build that. It's much better to sell it to the customer first, take the money that they give you, and then build it. That's startup in the 21st century. Find out what the customer wants, get them to purchase it, take their money or the purchase order, finance it at the bank, create the product, and then that's the best way to do it. If you have a product, it's really hard to sell. With Google, sometimes with a business model, sometimes with a technological innovation, a product or service innovation or a technological innovation, you need a business model innovation to make it work. The primary initial technological innovation that Google had was PageRank. And PageRank allowed this algorithm allowed them to create the search the way we know it today. But it really didn't take off until when? Until they created the revenue portion of their model, which was AdWords and AdSense. So they created AdWords and AdSense was the revenue portion that allowed them to take advantage of this technological superiority they had. And so it was the technology plus the revenue model of the business model, those two together, and that's when sales obviously took up because they really
but they didn't sell anything from the first place.
No, they didn't.
None of these.
No, they didn't.
They made it wrong. Facebook, Twitter, Google, all of these guys just made it wrong from the beginning.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. But how many are there?
3?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it can happen, and businesses are created and wealth is created in a whole bunch of different ways, but it's really tough. I'm not in the kind of pray and hope method of making money. I want to kind of have a plan where I'm relatively successful that I can. And if I'm instructing you as an entrepreneur on how to build your business, I don't want to say, let's do this and hope. I want to say, let's plan to do this because I know this will work.
Questions? Are getting a workout today. It's great.
Thank you. I was wondering about finding out what the customers want.
Yes.
To find a pain, that's kind of hard sometimes. You just can't ask them.
Yeah,
how do you do that?
Excellent point. Most companies are dumb. Okay, most companies are dumb. They don't want to ask their customers what they want. They're scared. I don't know what company you work for, but companies generally do not want to ask their customers anything. Because if they ask the customer something, the customer might tell them something they don't want to hear. Like, your product sucks, or you need to do something else. So most companies don't want to talk to their customers at all. So the smart companies might have focus groups. Focus groups, everyone heard focus groups? Okay, focus groups suck. Okay, the reason that focus groups suck is because most people don't know how to use them. They put people in a room, okay, and ask them questions. What type of product would you like to see? What color would it like to be? If people only will answer with what they know exists, what they know is available. Okay, so if you go ahead and create a product, it takes 6 months to develop it, you create a product, you're going to be way behind. So what you have to do is you have to do one or two things. Observe behavior to try to understand what needs are, what needs and wants are, or you need to ask questions in an indirect way so that you can then find out what their real needs are. We really do not understand buying behavior very well. We really don't know why people buy, and if you know, why do you like Crest over Pepsodent? Okay? We really don't know why. It could be the fact that your mother used Crest and you use Crest and it's just a habit thing. We really don't know why we buy. So asking direct questions is not the best way. That's why this is simple, but not easy. It's simple because all we have to do is find out what the customer wants. It's hard because how we do that has to be in an indirect sort of way.
I wonder one other thing.
Sure.
It seems like the blue ocean strategy.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
You're not a fan
No.
of that? Okay, it felt a bit like that was kind of a part of the business model innovation part, and the pivot is the testing phase.
The blue ocean strategy. The guys at McKinsey are really good at taking the obvious and packaging it really well and selling it. Okay, the blue ocean strategy is about that most people are competing in the red ocean, and the red is the blood. There's lots of competition. What you want to do is you want to create a product and service in the blue ocean where there's no people. Okay, so how do we do it? They don't know. All they talk about is companies that have done it looking retrospectively. They don't tell you how to do it. So that whole thing is kind of a waste. It's a nice book. It's a nice way to put a nice metaphor. It's some flowery words. They made a lot of money. McKinsey made a lot of money on consulting, but don't waste your time on that.
I would like to hook into the previous question.
Yeah.
How do you see on companies that actually rely on network effect, like Twitter or Foursquare, where you need to have a substantial user base before the users really see any benefits?
Yes, and the question is?
How do you sort of do the business model? How can you can't really go out and ask people, would you like this, because they don't see the benefit.
Yeah, well, what tends to happen with these companies is you need to have a very rapid growth in terms of the number of users, so much so that you're able to persuade some people that Beth knows to give you a lot of money to build the infrastructure to allow you to do it, and then hope that there's a revenue model down the road. Twitter is still struggling with that, and it's unclear whether or not it. I mean, even Skype is. I mean, Skype is doing a little bit better, but even though no one might use it after a couple of months now, but that's another story. So yeah, it's a different sort of animal.
Do we have any more questions? And I can't see really any on the Twitter stream either.
Good. I'm looking forward to seeing how many people. This was
like
horrible.
crazy.
I can't stand it. What is it?
And they're so nice to you.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So I would really like to thank you, Terence,
Great. Thank you.
for a great session.